The modern Prometheus at home. When humans unlocked the human genome, they discovered the code for life. They discovered the DNA sequence that makes up for all of us. This led to the door of genetic modification. Just like the myth, genetic modification can come in a Pandora's box that we have opened and have let everything inside it come out. Of course, it is at an early stage, but we shall concern with this and agree upon international laws and the importance of them towards CRISPR. The genetic modification allows us for a new world, which nowadays can be achieved through CRISPR. What is CRISPR? CRISPR is the most accessible and easy way of genetic modification. It's also very common due to its relative simplicity and accuracy. It works by having a Cas9 protein which can be used to target a DNA sequence. For example, any disease which is hidden in the DNA or genetic can be targeted. For example, Turner syndrome, Down syndrome. These diseases could potentially be cured. Yet, CRISPR allows for an entire realm. You could enhance muscle measurements, muscle density, height, weight, essentially anything that is encoded in your DNA and what makes you human, allowing for creating the new Prometheus, a new human, and a human at will, which comes to the new debate of designer babies. Designer babies would consist of a baby that you designed, its DNA being CRISPR altered at your will, making the baby inherit traits that are not his own but developed through scientific methods. Now, the topic of this conversation will get us back to the Pandora's box, which is undiscriminated use of CRISPR, or biohackers, as they are called. Biohackers were released from the Pandora's box and they have been allowed to manipulate genes at their will. Biohacking, or biohackers as the term created, is a modality where anybody with some scientific knowledge, not necessarily a degree or anything, advocates and uses this CRISPR to change themselves and inject them on themselves or others. Essentially, an unregulated practice of medicine. Now, there are huge cases and advocates like Aaron Trewick. Aaron Trewick was the CEO of Ascendance Biomedical. He has now died, although the cases haven't been investigated enough to trace it back to CRISPR. But he was indeed one of the biggest advocates of undiscriminated use of CRISPR, to the extent of going to conferences and testing it on himself. He suffered cancer and he had developed a prototype for a CRISPR-enhanced cure. The CRISPR cure was injected to himself by himself in a conference, advocating people to do it themselves and placing themselves on the moral debate that CRISPR should be used at will and as freeness as people. Josiah Sainer raises a lot of new questions and new debates for the international laws on CRISPR. He, just like Aaron, is an advocate for undiscriminated CRISPR use at home, where the title comes to play, the modern Prometheus. He is a huge advocate of developing experiments at yourself, to the extent of selling on his own website and business the Odin CRISPR kits. These CRISPR kits can be purchased from anywhere in the world and can be used for any gene modification that you wish. He sells courses alongside with them and guides you through the use of CRISPR. By having this, the ethical debate is raised once again. To what extent shall we be the guides of our own medicine? To what extent shall we practice medicine without any degree or without any prior knowledge? To what extent shall genetic modification be a business, and to what extent shall we exploit it, just like Josiah Sainer does? He, as a biohacker, and with sites like this, he is promoting undiscriminately and with no regard of law the use of CRISPR. Now, Not all countries have stayed silent about it. Germany and the UK have put laws on people like him, laws that don't allow genetic modification on humans to be done at home or to be done without any prior knowledge. In the US, California has also emitted the same laws. Now, another question comes from these laws and from these kind of people. Is it ethical to leave medicine in the hands of people that are experimenting? There is no easy way to conclude a topic like this, the topic of becoming the engineers of our own lives. Now, we can take conservative stances and go to a conservative side and stop and advocate the stop of genetic modification for the time being. This in order to test it and make it adequate. Allow the scientific bodies to tell us what happens in the long term, to tell us in detail what is happening with our bodies, and not experiment like biohackers. Or we could take the libertarian side. We could go to a place where we could allow everyone to exploit CRISPR at desire, to make genetically modified babies, to cure diseases at home. To what extent we can limit this? Now, here is where the importance of laws and international law comes into place. International law, now not as a war measure, it could be a war against biohacking. It could be a war that regulates the medicine at home. People like Josiah are being investigated. That use is clearly not the procedure to go, not the way medicine wants it to go. So, where should we point ahead of us? Where shall we guide this future that we have discovered? This future gives us unlimited access to everything. We can create the new humans, the new dogs, the new animals, the new plants. Life can belong to us with the CRISPR, with the Cas9, with the genetic modification. With this debate, it's up to governments and competent entities to decide what is safe for most. We cannot be empirical and decide for the rest. It is impossible for everyone to agree on one thing. The debate shall take a long time and no measurements can be taken now. Genetic modification is a field that will be explored for the next 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. There is no limit to it, or no limit found yet. And if we haven't killed ourselves by the time we reach a conclusion, shall it be the best conclusion? And shall we, as a human race, be safe from unregulations and unsafety measures that will counteract us and eventually destroy their own race? Now, special thanks to Kurzgesagt in a nutshell and Teret for the images. This debate, as established priorly, cannot be really answered. And it is up to us to decide who takes the blame for what and who gets responsible for what. Personally, I advocate for international law to implement strict measures so that biohackers cannot go around indiscriminately selling to anyone and turning CRISPR not only into an unethical measure, but a business. Yes, it is a field that we shall explore, and eventually we may even find a cure for aging, cancer, and everything that now is killing us. We shall see what the future lays for CRISPR and genetic modification.